keep in mind what we will be covering, here are some of the topics. We're going to be looking at Adobe templates in stock. This is built inside of Premiere Pro and can provide a really efficient workflow for when you're working with text and making that presentation a lot easier. I feel myself getting into a screaming match with the intense amount of reverb that's going to pass through this room. And I just can't get over the fact of these thin curtains. So if I lose my distraction, it's only because someone's probably screaming from another room. So bear with me. But we're going to look at the difference between After Effects and Premiere templates. So those are both available to us inside of Premiere Pro. And they're pre-animated, so we're going to sense for how we can manipulate them. And this is all made possible because of the Essential Graphics panel. This exists in both Premiere and After Effects. We'll look at it in Premiere first, and then head over into After Effects. There's a really important concept called pinning that can save you a lot of time if you're building things such as lower thirds and producing that and having it move, where you can connect, essentially, shapes with text layers so that you've probably maybe seen a template where I enter in text that's a different size, the actual rectangle scales with it. And that's one thing that pinning does. We're going to talk about responsive design, working with type in After Effects, adding text presets. There's something in After Effects called the range selector, which allows you to do character by character animation. So we'll take a brief look at that. The Cinema 4D renderer is a nice way of saying, hey, I can get some extruded type inside of After Effects. We're going to look at that as well. And of course, saving an After Effects template and making it available for someone in Premiere. Now, this session, I'm going to try as best as possible to split between the two applications again, so 40-ish minutes in each. Wait, that's a totally wrong calculation based on a 75-minute session. Great math, Nick. But about 30 minutes in each, and we'll go over a few other things before the end of this. So there you have it. Before we jump into the application, I just want to do a little bit of why you might consider animating in both applications. So why would you animate type in Premiere? One great advantage to Premiere is working with lots of video. How many of you have video clips that you get that's about 2 hours in length? 2 hours of raw material. How many of you are working with shorter form video content, like a minute? Not the final product, but you receive like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of video. So for those of you who have shorter content, you might want to consider going to After Effects and getting more dynamic text animation. For those of you who have a lot more material to cut down in terms of video, you might consider working in Premiere Pro because you get the robustness of video editing trim tools, which is going to really speed up that process of working with video and then basically integrating it with type. In Premiere, you have access to 2 sets of templates. So people can build templates in Premiere, and they can also build them in After Effects, and you get access to both of them inside of Premiere Pro. Inside of After Effects, you get access to After Effects templates, not the Premiere ones. For most situations, in terms of video, it does have a robust set of text tools combined with the offerings of Adobe Stock, and this can save you time without complication. And we can also talk about the ability of simple overlay graphics contained inside of Premiere Pro and great animation available without going into After Effects. Now, After Effects, on the other hand, you've got hundreds of text presets available for you. And a big difference in animation in most cases is Premiere offers a lot of flexibility when you want to animate a word in, right? But when it comes to character by character animation, it's not as fluid as After Effects. So if you want character by character animation or animating something in 3D, like from on-screen to off-screen, one of those advantages might be to go to After Effects. We're going to talk that it also has more masking capabilities, something that we'll look at in both applications, has a better compositing, keyframing, and VFX options. We can create our own text presets, as well as After Effects templates to work in both applications. And there's a little bit of magic in After Effects that I use for text all the time. You might have seen the intro video, and text felt like it was part of a camera movement. And that's something that you can actually do in After Effects with a lot of ease. So something we might take a look at. And last but not least, going into After Effects, you can make great 3D type, courtesy of the Cinema 4D renderer, and do it fast and easily. So I'm about to hop into Premiere in a second, but also wanted to talk about a text animation tip between these two applications that you should know. All animation is available through keyframing, okay? We create keyframes to basically establish where we want text to be at a certain point in time. And the default, what we'll call the fancy word for it is interpolation, is set to a linear method. What this means is that when you have text, let me give you a paradigm here where we have text move from left to right across the screen. By default, there is no speed up or slow down as it moves those two places or two positions. So what we want to do in most cases, in all cases for having your text move easily and fluently, is change that method, to change it so that it's easing. If I could draw another parallel, that would be something as simple as if you're driving in a car and you approach a stop sign or a stop light, what happens is that you ease in. On top of that, usually you'll overshoot your target and pull a little bit back. So in most cases, in both applications, we're going to look at changing these methods as well as other things that might make for more organic movement. So here's an example of a person in a car. If they were slamming on their brakes, we kind of want to avoid those linear keyframes in most situations. Now, when I think of text animation, some principles I actually got from character animation. And there is a book by a couple Walt Disney character animators from back in the day who essentially created 12 principles of animation. Not all of these principles assign to text animation, but it might be worthwhile for you to take a look at a few videos that I've seen on YouTube that explain these principles and what they say will make for great character animation, and compare that to text animation that you like and see how you could essentially achieve the same thing. But I would say that a good portion of these can still be applied in terms of making text move throughout each application. You can kind of compare the frames there of someone moving or doing a somersault to some text underneath it, slowly of an animation taking place to create some of these principles of animation. So something to keep in mind. And I want to add one additional principle which I think speaks for both text and logos, and that is sound. Sound in terms of adding a sound effect to your text as it moves, to every almost item that would move on screen, would really help sell the movement. And through sound, in some cases, you can even get away with linear movement, such as if it was a slam on screen. So this principle of sound will try to carry through a handy third-party application that you can use in After Effects to add sound easily. But I'm sure many of you have access to free sound, and I'll give you some resources within my documents later. So sound can make text more alive. So why don't we take some of these principles and these ideas and see how they work in both applications. Does that sound good? Awesome. Okay, so let me close down my keynotes, and I'll head right inside of Premiere Pro. So inside my timeline right now, I've got two text templates. Does everyone see the two color differences? The one on the left is from Premiere Pro. The one on the right, which I'm over right now, the one that's more pinkish in color, actually, yeah, pink rosé-ish in color, is from After Effects. Both of these templates, again, are available inside Premiere Pro for you to use. How you access some of these templates, i.e., this particular modern title is available for free inside the Essential Graphics panel. If you're new to Premiere Pro, one thing that you'll probably want to do is after you've opened up a project is go to your window menu, and under Workspaces, you'll choose your graphics layout, which I currently am already in. Notice here on the left-hand side, I have the Essential Graphics panel, and I'd like to break this down into two parts for you. So I'm going to press the tilde key. This is a squiggly line to the left of the one, which makes any window in After Effects or Premiere Pro full frame. Now, some of these templates are available for free, and you'll see a lot of them appear to have warnings, and that's basically just saying that, hey, I'm using a typeface from basically fonts, Adobe fonts, and you might need to download this from the web in order to have the appropriate type with this template that you're seeing in my thumbnail. So if you see any of these icons right here, you might have to download that font onto your system. Some of these are Premiere Pro templates, and others, some that are more with backgrounds and loops here for broadcast, are from After Effects. And you can find out, number one, by dragging those into the timeline. I would also like to preface by saying that right now in the Essential Graphics panel, I'm in Browse under My Templates. Some of these templates I've purchased from Adobe stock, so if you go home and don't see some of them, it's because it's an extra purchase that you have to go through over here. You can store templates or text templates in one of two places. So you can place it locally on a drive. And how many of you guys are already using libraries through another application? Okay. So libraries are a great way to store templates. You can store them in several libraries. And the really cool thing about libraries is that you can share them collaboratively amongst a team. So something to keep in mind is if you're in a collaborative workflow, storing some templates to a library, you can share your library and then give someone access to some of your templates in a work situation. So we've got multiple storage locations, as well as ways to search for templates and make some templates as favorites. So a lot of options here in terms of finding what you're looking for. So I want to just give you the sense for bringing a template in, and then we'll take a look at Adobe stock. But it's really just grabbing onto a template and dragging it in to an existing sequence. The sequence is essentially where we're going to be building our Premiere Pro project. You'll see it takes a second to load. This particular template was from After Effects based on the color that I see, and now I have the ability to manipulate it. When it comes to the difference between Premiere Pro and After Effects templates in Premiere, I'm going to select the Premiere Pro template and show you that one cool thing about templates here is that you can select text in the program monitor and change it right here. That's a great addition that you have where you can take this modern title and say, Adobe Max maybe, seems suiting. I'm excited that this is my last session as well. So you can have that and make that adjustment. Now the shape in particular actually needs to be adjusted inside the Essential Graphics panel. Did everyone see how it switched from the Browse tab to the Edit tab in Essential Graphics? So you can see over here, I was browsing for templates before, but because I selected that text, this Edit tab opened up, giving me access to making adjustments to that. And I can make adjustments to the two elements, one the text, the other being the shape. Okay? Now with an After Effects template, I'm just going to move over that 3D type again. It's going to take a second to load, as in some of these can be processor intensive. And just for a second, I actually want to head over to Adobe stock, which I do have up on my website here, and show you I'm in the Adobe stock section under templates, motion graphic templates. And here's one way where you can preview those templates. That love template that you just saw, this is the same thing. But I made some alterations to it to make it a different color, and it had different backgrounds that I could access that I use for a particular project. So some of these templates that you see, keep in mind that many of them have additional options. Really good ones tell you or try to tell you what's inside of them that you can use and utilize inside your Premiere Pro workflow. There is also an area that we've already seen briefly in the Browse tab that we can access Adobe stock from here. And cool things involve searching some of the templates, looking for templates that are free, and then looking for the premium paid templates available for your production. Now I have a question. How many of you guys become overwhelmed by the ton of templates that are available for you in a situation? So in the silhouetting, so most people are happy with all of the templates that are available to. If I were to say a piece of advice, what I try to do is before choosing a template, I try to pick a theme for mostly which I'm involved in is a video project. And match either the brand or design or mix that with how I feel about a project in its internal state while I'm looking through templates in order to utilize that better. Now, this template, the stroke text, again, if I select it in the Essential Graphics panel, we see that we have now a ton of various options available for you that you can use and change of your text. But one thing to keep in mind is that text from After Effects gets changed inside the Essential Graphics panel. Text from Premiere gets changed on the program monitor. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference between the two. And again, you can see the color differences between those two templates. Now, inside here, just to show you some of the options, if I go to the very bottom, there is a control for background, which allows me to navigate between various backgrounds here of the template. We should see in a second that background changes. This is just because that's extruded text that it just takes a second to load up that background. But simply going through those backgrounds, I can now create a different scene than the one that was presented towards me. I can also, of course, change the text by simply entering into the field and then clicking in an area over here off of the text, and we'll see that that template updates right away. So in the Essential Graphics panel, I want you to think about any changes that you make are only static, okay? We're not going to do any type of animation in that menu unless someone provided you animation options from an After Effects template. Everyone with me? So every type of animation inside of Premiere Pro is going to happen in effect controls, okay? So these same parameters that you see in Essential Graphics, most of them will appear in an effect controls window, which will have options for keyframing. And I'm going to show you this by building a lower third template. With that said, if we take a look here at effect controls, with this layer selected, you can see that these are the options I have available in an After Effects template to animate. Pretty much anything with a stopwatch. Here, if I go inside the Premiere Pro template, you'll see because it was built in Premiere Pro, there are a lot more options. In fact, separate options for animating the shape. Again, anything with a stopwatch. Separate options for animating text. Okay? So let's build a common thing for Premiere Pro that you might want to use, which is a lower third creation. And then we'll hop through some other examples of integrating it. For a lower third, there actually happens to be a text tool. And we can start off for scratch building Premiere templates with this text or type tool by selecting the type tool and also paying attention in the timeline to where my playhead is. I'm going to start to type in some text. So this is from Toronto, Canada. And I'll enter a second line featuring this date. To get out of this text entry mode, I'm just going to go back to the default selection tool. And I'm going to have this title match the length of the clip that's underneath it. Does anyone see what's happening in the Essential Graphics panel over to the side? So there is a link between the type tool and the Essential Graphics tool. Meaning the minute you start typing, you have access and continue to do things inside that panel for a Premiere Pro template. Such as, let's try to change this font. First of all, I want to change the Toronto, Canada font. So in the program monitor, I will highlight it. And I'm going to come down to my text options in Essential Graphics under Edit. Wait for a second. And rather than look through all the fonts, I know I'm going to share this template with other editors on different systems, and I don't know what fonts they have installed. So I'm going to filter my search results here for just Adobe fonts, since I know they're going to be working inside of Premiere Pro, and choose one that I think is appropriate for this type of project. I'll head here to one of my favorite fonts now, because I've clicked on the star, and under Proxima Nova, I will take this text that's highlighted, and I'm going to make it semi-bold. I'll then come down to my October 17th, 2018 text and make a similar change here by doing a filtered search, heading over into that Proxima Nova font and just choosing a different style. And in fact, I'll take this entire template and scale it down. But note that you actually have, when you have highlighted text, individual controls to scale it down to any size that you'd like. Okay? So I'll take this text and scale it down quite a bit. Let's do that again to the overall text. And one other thing that I might want to pay attention into here is where this text itself has its anchor point, depending on the type of animation that I'm looking for. So something to keep in mind. Now, before we get into animating this in a few different ways, I'd like to add something inside the Essential Graphics panel. You see this menu here? So it's a new layer menu. It's kind of small, but allows you to add additional things to now your text template inside of Premiere. One of those things is a rectangle, which we'll add. It goes to these default appearance options that you see down here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that stroke and create a fill. I'm going to make sure that the fill color in this particular case happens to be that of a grayish color. I'm going to move this rectangle, and the reason I'm moving this is because it's selected here in Essential Graphics. I'm going to move it kind of right over my text and start to change its scale. And then I think it might be a good idea to also look at the text. So I'm going to move it down here in Essential Graphics. Just an idea there. I might play with the opacity and with more time even design a line between those two, and I could even animate it with a mask. I like to do a simple animation first, but before I do, there's something super cool that you should know about in Essential Graphics. And that, again, is what I referred to as pinning. What pinning does is allows you to connect this shape to the text, and if you make any changes to this template, the rectangle will grow with it. So here with the shape layer selected, notice that under responsive design, I see there that there is a video frame, and under video frame, I'm going to go here and attach this shape to Toronto, Canada. Now, nothing's really happened that's worthy yet until I click this little button. So this is select which edges of the parent layer will be used for pinning. This is actually used, if any of you guys use Adobe Rush, you can pin it to the edge of a frame, and this would allow, if you ever have to produce content for, say, Instagram or another format that's not a standard video format, it would pin to that and scale down accordingly. Really cool. So now that it's properly pinned, I'm going to test this out. So just for this sake, I'm going to make a copy of this template. One way of doing that in Premiere is to Option click and drag. I will release my mouse and then the Option key. We see here that we now have a unique copy, and I will change this, as in this is not Toronto, Canada, and maybe even spell it right. Do you guys see the rectangle? What's happening? It's scaling with the text, right? So how many of you produce lower thirds or would produce lower thirds? Quite a few of you. How many of you guys actually find this useful? So the ability that when you make text, to have a rectangle object beside it, scale with it. And I will say that there are ways of doing it in After Effects, but this is definitely something, if you're doing lower thirds, you're going to want to do in Premiere, and it's awesome. So let's now go inside a simple animation. Any property, again, in Effect Controls can be animated, such as the scale of the overall shape. By the way, this is scaling based on the anchor point of this entire shape, or here in the motion parameter, which happens to be in the center of the frame rather than on the text layer. So if I wanted to make this change, I would just grab this anchor point and drag it right here if that was what I was looking to do, was to scale up the text from the center of that. How I'm doing this, by the way, is I have the word motion selected, and here I go and scale that down, and you can probably see a bit of that there in the program monitor, but we see that scaling taking place. Okay. So let me do a quick animation of this. We'll do a scale, and I always usually talk out my animations personally. I'm not going to talk it out loud, but I'll usually have a piece of paper beside me and say what I like to do, and then translate that over before starting to touch the keyframes. So with that said, I want to scale these two layers up from a 0% scale to 100% over the period of what I'm going to say is about 20 frames. A great way to get to the first frame of that text layer is to just press the down arrow when your timeline is selected. And I'll now select my text, and I'm going to scale this or keyframe this by clicking the stopwatch. So just notice what's happened here. We see that there's a keyframe, right? This is that thing that's saying, hey, at this point in time, I'd like the scale to be something that you enter. And that scale happens to be 0. Now, in a number of ways, I can move 20 frames in the timeline forward. One way to do that is with your shift right arrow, which moves in 5-frame increments across. That's shift right arrow, right arrow, right arrow, right arrow. And here, with this selected, I will make this 100%. And we'll see here that over time, what's happened is in between these two keyframes, it scales from 0 to 100. A couple quick animation principles. That is, notice that the first time that I added a keyframe, I clicked the stopwatch. The second time that I added a keyframe, I did not click the stopwatch. I just changed the value of the text. And in changing the value of the text, the scale parameter in this particular case, I was able to now have an animation here with my text. I'm going to change that movement because, again, it's very linear. And how I'll do that is to select these two keyframes. And if I now right or control click either one of those, I have additional options to change, again, how it speeds up and slows down from a given keyframe. Those of you from After Effects, ease in and ease out are available, or something called Bezier, which is going to give you access to curves and make more dynamic animations. So I'll choose Bezier for now. And you'll see that those two keyframes have actually changed to what I like to consider hourglasses. And if we take a look at the animation, the text itself goes in or slows down into a keyframe. It would slow down even more if I took one of these keyframes and changed the way that this animated. So you can see that easing even more. Now, for further easing, Premiere has graph editors that you can use. And you can get access to that under the disclosure triangle. And does everyone see this graph here? It's kind of small and definitely not as large as After Effects. But here's where I can even add additional easing to that graphic to have an even better slowdown. So taking a look now, you have a much more larger slowdown than you did before. Or maybe you want to do the opposite based on the sound of the voiceover that's taking place there in your project. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to eventually hand someone this template, okay? And what's going to happen is they might want to scale it and make it bigger or longer than this that's already here. And for this purpose, when they scale up that template, they make that text longer with this animation included, I want to make sure that that animation length is preserved. So in this concept, what I'd like to do is head here to my Essential Graphics panel and basically use something called responsive design. The best way to think about this is protecting a certain region of your text graphic, your text graphics or your essential graphics, and making sure that that region is unscalable. In Premiere, this is at the beginning and end of a particular animation that you might do. So in looking at this animation, knowing that now it's a little bit over a second, I'm going to protect about a second and 20 frames of this animation. And look at the timeline right now. Does everyone see on my clip a really faint line? Kinda? Not so much? Okay. So here we have that faint line, and that is your protected region right there at the in animation. We can do the same thing for the out region. I just sort of dragged out a specific time, but we see a reflection of that in the timeline. We also see a reflection of that right here in Effect Controls. And this is going to allow you now to take this template, right? And when you choose to save it, make it available to someone else in Premiere Pro and make sure that that animation doesn't stretch. Now, even more so, if I go here and right-click this template, this is what makes that exporting of a motion graphics template possible inside of Premiere Pro. Once I choose this option, a few things are going to happen. One is I go into the Export as Motion Graphics template folder. And going back to what we saw in Essential Graphics, we saw that we had access to a local templates folder or a library. And again, this library can be shared, and you can access it on a different system where you might have Premiere Pro installed. I usually choose, if I'm working on a local system, to save it in the local templates folder like now. And most importantly, I choose compatibility options. I want this template, when I drag it in the timeline, to warn me if I don't have the appropriate fonts from Adobe Fonts, if I'm using any effects that's not included, and even if this template is not compatible with Adobe Rush, which is based on if you don't animate a certain amount of principles. If you animate a certain amount of effect controls here, some are not available in Rush. But if I choose these options, it just gives me those warnings in case there's a compatibility issue, making it a lot better for me just to know and animate that text template. So I'm not going to save this, but this is your process of having this template now available for you in Essential Graphics to use in additional projects. Pretty cool? Awesome. So let's take a look at a few, just one other template option that I wanted to mention, and that is credits. There's quite a few credit templates available for you. And one really cool thing that is available is your ability to roll that credit text. So if I choose this roll option, immediately I have options for this starting off screen and on screen, as well as a pretty well-designed template that's been animated for me that I can start to switch and manipulate on screen. So this type of animation is already built in to that template, a scroll, which can be great for certain projects. I also want to talk about taking a text template in particular and kind of integrating it maybe into a piece of footage in a Premiere Pro project. So here I have a template, which I actually switched and created more of an easing on my text as it comes in. And what I would prefer is for this template, or this text template, to actually be behind the rock. Okay? So what I'm going to do is combine this with a little bit of Premiere Pro masking. Does everyone see here that I've made another copy of my clip that's underneath the text? It's currently turned off, but I've just made a copy, dragged it up. It should show, and I wanted to show you right now that by using Premiere Pro, I was able to mask out this particular rock. So the cool thing about this is that inside of every clip, or inside of actually every text element as well, there are some parameters which will allow you to actually add masks. And one of those happens to be on every clip. In Premiere Pro, almost every clip does have what are called fixed values. That is your scale, your position, your rotation, but it includes masks for opacity as well. So here's an opacity fixed effect. And this here, I was able to add a mask to it. And you notice something else? The mask moves with the image. I was able to track it. and inside of Premiere Pro, basically hide my text so that I would have a little bit more of a fluid animation. Okay? So this can be easily done. And by the way, on any, or in this particular case, the opacity value, adding masks is as simple as clicking one of these shapes. So clicking on one of these shapes, you can see here, adds a mask to that image. And it's this little play button here, which allows us to track our images or values inside to create dynamic reveals. I want to keep this in mind here because you can do these exact same reveals with text, right? So you can actually do mask reveals with your text elements and your shape elements to have them revealed inside your projects. And all it takes is going to the opacity value of one of those given elements and then animating that across the screen. So something that you can include to make a little bit more dynamic text inside your projects. Okay, let's now, just taking a look here at the time, do a little bit of a hop over into After Effects. Then we're going to head back over into Premiere Pro for the end of this. Does that sound good with everybody? Okay. Now, there's a few different links between After Effects and Premiere Pro. And I am going to cover the first one, which is, here I have a clip, and I want to add some text. I want to have that text animated. So let's send that over to let's send that over to After Effects. That link is through Adobe Dynamic Link, where you select a clip or a series of clips in a timeline, and from the File menu, you choose this option here, which is Adobe Dynamic Link, replace with an After Effects composition. Notice a couple things take place, but what's happened is I now have my clip inside an After Effects composition. I had After Effects opened in the background, so it got added to the project that was open. And if I look now inside of Premiere Pro, you see the different color of my clip? Okay. It's no longer a clip inside of Premiere Pro, it is a clip inside of After Effects. And one thing to keep in mind is certain effects do not translate over to Premiere Pro. Some do, but some don't, so you want to just be wary of that before sending it. But you can always undo if you don't like the look of your clip that you send over by any means. So let's, here, add some text inside of After Effects. And the way that we do that is very similar to Premiere Pro, where we select a horizontal type tool. We'll click on that right now. And I'll just start to type Martin. This is my friend from San Francisco. He just moved there from Toronto. And whenever you're working with type, you'll probably want to go into the window menu and choose the text workspace inside of After Effects. This is going to give you a couple panels to work with, which are really effective. You get access to the paragraph panel for alignment and the character panel for making text changes and additions. So right now I've got the actual font that I want, but inside the character panel, with my text selected, I'll scale it up. There's additional panel that I sometimes use to position the text in the center of the frame, and that happens to be the Align panel. What this allows is for you to click on Align Horizontal, click on Align Vertical, and you can see there that my text is in the dead center of the frame. I'm just going to move this here over to the lower right-hand corner. And now I'd like to animate this text. Now, if this is the first time that you're here in After Effects, what you're probably going to want to do is see the presets that are available for text animation. These presets are available in a similar panel to After Effects called Effects and Presets. So you can see it right here. And all of the text presets are available under Animation Presets, Text. There's one problem with this, though. The problem is you can't see any of the animations, okay? So if you did it this way, you'd have to drag your text animation onto your text and see what it does based on the name that you've chosen. There is, however, a link with Adobe Bridge if you download it. And that link is if you select your text, you come over here and go to your animation menu, you'll see an option to browse presets. Once I click on that, you guys saw a little pop there of bridge. I'm hoping that pop didn't crash the program. Yeah. It's even tired. It's Adobe Max, right? So did After Effects crash too? No. Okay, good. So you're going to take my word for this. I'm just going to show you. Hopefully this time it will open. Everyone just cross their fingers with me. Awesome. Thank you. We're going to give this just a second try, but I do want to show that, hey, it's opening up bridge. And hey, there's an area here. No, I don't want to update, man. Okay. So it's the end of the day. Okay. So here is your text in particular. And these are the text categories. And if I click on one, you actually get previews over on the left, right-hand side. Now, in this preview area, the really cool thing is that if you double-click a piece of text that you like, you'll be able to place that on in After Effects and then manipulate it. Of course, right now, I can see that the previews are still loading up. That's because it takes a while, sometimes the first time, when you first launch the application. But I can see here that there are a number of thumbnails. And even these thumbnails kind of give you an idea of what that text does without you having to drag each and every one of those on here. Now, if I were to give you guys one takeaway about this, is that you can create these on your own. You can create any text preset and then share it with someone else. You can also do animation, basically those animation techniques I showed you inside of Premiere Pro. You can save those as well as presets to apply to other elements inside of Premiere Pro. And it's with this saving of presets that's really going to save you time to get even more dynamic animation for when the time is right. So I'm going to give this a test, this is a slow fade on. I'll double click, cross my fingers, and hop into After Effects where it has added that actual preset. And if I press the space bar, without music, we're able to see that it does do a slow reveal. And that's this addition now that we have here in After Effects, is this character-by-character animation. Now, just like Premiere Pro, this animation is controlled by 2 keyframes. If I select the text layer and press the U key, I can see those 2 keyframes. You can see them right here in the timeline. Great little shortcut key to reveal what's been animated. And at any point in time, you can select them and then choose to either change the way that this animates or actually create a type of easing. And in After Effects, this is available under the Animation menu. There's something called a Keyframe Assistant, and I'm going to choose, in this instance, to easy ease them. Within an instance, we now have easing there on both of these keyframes. I could take this slow fade on and make the animation longer. And one of my favorite things to do is usually when I reveal a text or take a text animation, so to speak, I'll usually select those keyframes and then repeat the animation in the opposite way out. In After Effects, this can be done easily with copying and pasting. So what I'll do is select those keyframes, press Command-C. I'll hop over to the end of my timeline. And with this offset value still selected, press Command-V. And have that animation, unfortunately, repeated. But that's not too bad, because that same animation assistant, that's Animation, Keyframe Assistant, allows me to reverse my keyframes. Now here I want to show you, there's my fade in, and if I move to the end, there is my fade out in the exact same way. So this simple little animation might be what I like to use on a lot of pieces of text. And this is actually something that I can share with something in Premiere Pro eventually, which you'll see in a little while. But even cooler is my ability to take what I've just done and save this as a preset, so I don't have to apply it to any other text later. And just to let you know, this is going to be available under the Animation, Save Animation Preset menu. Okay? How's everyone doing? So far, so good? How was that? Was that new for a lot of people? Are you wanting me to show something a little bit more advanced? Step it up a bit? Okay. How many of you guys want me to step it up a little bit? Room. the room, a little bit of the room does. Cool. So let's hop into a few things. One is I want to show the text tracking engine. I believe this to be the biggest bang for your buck if you're coming from Premiere over to After Effects to implement text and make it dynamic in a scene. The idea here is that this particular shot has some camera motion, and I want some text to be attached to this mountain. Adobe has a little bit of magic, and that magic in particular is this. You select an actual clip, you head to this famous animation menu, and you say this, track the camera motion. This adds an effect onto my text layer. And that text layer in particular here, we can see here the 3D camera tracker has been added. What it's going to do, if it was the first time that you added this, is actually analyze your clip. It's going to analyze it throughout and provide you with a series of tracking points. Now give me a second, I'm going to show you these tracking points. We're going to pretend like Adobe did its magic. Everyone now see these tracking points? The ones that are larger is what this effect has seen as closer to the camera. The ones that are smaller are the ones that it sees as farther away. What I do now is play something called the triangle game. The triangle game basically puts your text at a certain perspective. Does everyone see that 3 of those points are selected? There's the triangle, there's my target, there's the perspective that my text is going to come in. So here we have an element, come down here, select one of these triangles. By the way, you can select additional points. You can drag a lasso, select multiple points. And if I click, I'm going to create text and a camera. What this is going to do is add some text. Hello, little text. Really there, far off in the background. But just to show you this, I'm going to press S for scale. I'm going to shift drag to make this a lot bigger. This is a quick way of being able to drag up your text. If I just press the space bar, how many buttons have I clicked so far? 2 or 3? And I've got text attached to my scene. So this is your biggest bang for your buck if I think about integrating text into your scene. Now I'm going to continue a little bit. And how I'm going to continue is that this text is actually already in a 3D environment. If you take a look there in your timeline, here is a 3D camera tracker. If I press the U key, I can see that it's already keyframed camera movement mimicking the camera from the shot. Your text layer is in fact 3D. How I know is this little 3D column, and it's working with the camera motion. When text or any element becomes 3D, what we do is number one, it says basically, hey, I want you to interact with camera and lights. And number B, I'm going to give you a couple different parameters to access. Some of those parameters happen to be what we're going to call Z-space, which is depth. So in Premiere Pro, if you guys held up your fingers like this, the X-axis would be left and right, Y would be up and down, and Z would be depth space. These same parameters are available when it comes to rotation. So in Premiere, you have a circular rotation. In After Effects, X rotation is like this, a skipping rope. And then we have Y rotation, which is like a flag blowing in the wind. In After Effects, if I press R for rotation, what I'm going to do is now rotate this element and place it a little bit better in my scene. By the way, RGB for X, Y, and Z. I'll take this, move this text a little bit over, bring it a bit down, and then have it animate into the scene. Now we're going to animate this text as well. We're going to animate it using the After Effects built-in text preset. Now how I'm going to do that is the following. On every text layer inside of After Effects is included is an animator. Everyone sees that here? This animator gives you a series of options available for you to animate properties with. This just comes with any text that you enter. What I'm going to do is do an animation number 1 in terms of scale, and then we're going to add to it. So on the text layer, what's happened magically by going to that play menu is that we have an animator 1 and we have a range selector. I want you to think about this range selector as a rectangle around your text, okay? Or a box. What crashed, man? Okay, so let's ignore that. Okay, cool. So we've got a rectangle around our box, or our text. And when that rectangle is around our text, it takes on the value of this scale. With me? The value of the scale is now 0. Do you see the text? Okay. So there are two parameters here. There is the value of the text in the range selector, and then there's the value of the scale of the text outside of the range selector or outside of the box. In order to move from one to the other, because I do want to animate the scale of the text, what I'm going to do is, in fact, animate one side of the box. Under this element here is a range selector 1 with a start and an end value. Start is the left side of the box. End is the right side of the box. As you move throughout the text, I just want you to pay attention to a little line that usually shows up. Well, it's an arrow in this case moving backwards that allows for that text animation to take place. I will come to the point just while we're scaling up and start to animate this on screen. So I'll start with a value here. Let me just get this up. I'm going to add a keyframe to start at 0. You can see a keyframe being added with the stopwatch. And I'm going to move here just after 5 seconds. And now we have a scale-in animation. This is not the magical part. This is just one value. What is magical about this is that in most cases, you just need that one, basically that one animator, that one range selector to animate a ton of properties. So let's talk this out a bit. What I'd like to do is have now this text also blur in and also change color as it's scaling in. Okay, so what I'm going to do, here's my range selector, and I want you to now notice two play buttons. The animate button, where we originally added the range selector, and the add button, where we're going to add additional properties to this range selector. If I come in here and click on the little add button, I'll add a property to my text to change the fill color of RGB. The default color is red. Let me just change that. And now, do you guys see that little flash of color change? Did I add any additional keyframes? No? Let's change this up a bit more. I'll add another property here. I'm going to add something called character offset. This value I'll set to a value of 40, 449 it looks like. And here, do you notice what's happening to your text? Or my text in this particular case. It's cycling through letters of the alphabet to reveal the actual characters. How many keyframes do I have? 2. How many properties do I have so far? I've got 3 properties, and it's done and it's pretty much set up. And this is now something that you can do earlier as in saving with this text preset. So another thing I'll add is blur, because I promised. I'll make that 23%, and now we have it blurring, fading up, and changing color. Now, most people, when you see a text animator, you ease the value of the keyframes of the range selector, which is okay, but you should know that every animator in particular, if I hop in to this animator, which in most cases I would change the name of, there are some advanced properties, and the advanced properties are really cool. One of them, number 1, allows you to ease the animation between the letters. This is known as ease high and ease low. I'll set this to 70% each. The other thing I'm going to do is randomize that animation and the order that it takes place. Last but not least, I'm going to come in here and change what's known as the shape, the square, or the rectangle as I like to call it. And I'm going to do one of the following. I usually mess these up. One is ramp down, and you'll see here that you get something that's it's pretty good. It's revealing the text on screen, but this letters or the animation starts a little bit now early before the keyframe. And what's happening, though, that's pretty cool, is so far what we've had is a character-by-character animation. Now, what we're going to have is 2 characters animated at a given time. So if you had a longer word, you'd have 2 or 3 letters drop down at once or scale up at once, and it would be more unified. In order to fix up this animation, what we're going to do is change the offset. I'll add a keyframe. I'll click on this to bring the offset to a negative value. I'll move in time, and then change the offset to a further value, and we'll have the cycle of more of those characters up at once, integrated into our scene in a character-by-character animation that we did manually using the animator one. And if you if you select it and save this as a preset, you don't have to do this again. Pretty cool? Okay. I'm going to share this with you. I'm going to save it as a preset, and you guys will get this through an email if you've signed up for the session. I'm also going to share this with you if I can find the composition, because the lights are starting to blind me. These are different types of animations where you can actually use that range selector that I showed you and get things such as bounces, squashes, and stretches, and changing the anchor point animation to create something more dynamic. Now, a lot is happening here, so let me just focus on the bounce. Nick, stop showing everything. Okay, so we've got a bounce of those characters here on the scene in terms of the text animator. Okay, you can create that using multiple text animators and moving between different squares and windows. And I will send you each of these presets that you can then apply to text and see how it was built to further develop how you'd like to use these text animation presets. Now, some of you might not want to do this. You don't want to go to After Effects ever again because this might be taking a lot of time. And I want to say that After Effects itself also has third-party providers who create, in some cases, maybe easier ways to animate for some people. One of those happens to be Animation Composer. This is a free third-party plugin to download. And what we can do with it is animate in a different way. So I'm going to go to the Window menu and choose Animation Composer. A window is going to pop up. By the way, it's like the first 20 or 30 effects are free, and then after that, you've got to pay for additional animations. But I want to just dock this window over here to the side. I'll use it as a tab. I'm going to select, as you can see, my text layer. I'm going to move to the beginning of my text. And in this panel, all the character animation for text is available under Transition Presets. And here we have a text category. You can kind of see over here to the side. Scale. Okay. These animate character options. And if I go into various categories, such as bounce and overshoot, you've got an in and an out animation done for you. Now, how do you add this to the text? Text layer is selected. I'm going to drag this as an in animation on my text layer. See that it adds a marker to your text close to the beginning and takes care of it for you without keyframes. You want to change the length of that animation, you can grab this marker and move it to another place in time, and you'll see there that it will slow it down for you automatically. No keyframes involved. It just does the work for you. And you can do this on tons of different layers and using things like sequence layers to really get some really dynamic text animations with this engine. For those of you who are used or interested in potentially doing some of this in Premiere Pro on words, there is a transition pack called Film Impact that allows you to have bounces on your text or bounces on layers or graphics that you bring in the application. I will supply a link to both of these resources in the keynote. All right, we've got a couple more things to cover. Another round of applause. It's 15 minutes to the end of Max in this final presentation. You guys are awesome for staying so long. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go in here and take a look at something called the Cinema 4D renderer. I built this entirely in After Effects using some dynamic camera animations and a handy plugin which is called, I got to remember the name of it. It's called Layer Generators. It's available on AE Scripts. And what it does is it gives you access to a library of 1,000 different types of vector icons. And what you can do is change them into shape layers in After Effects. And with shape layers, you can extrude them. All you need to do is be in something called the Cinema 4D renderer. This allows for the extrusion of shapes as well as text. And on my home text, I just want to show you that I just have a general animation here. The M is coming in separately, but this is just using the range selector that we saw earlier. Let me just show the entire thing here. I've got an animator on this text animating the position of the word home to fall in on screen. And the additional movement you see is from a text camera that's flying from further in depth space and moving here as those characters also rotate and move dynamically in together. This is also combined with reflections as well as shadows to give this end result. I will supply you guys with this project, this composition, for you to take a look at and see a little bit further. To bring it back home, we're going to come here inside and send now a text template over to Premiere Pro for use and see how the whole thing comes together. You guys with me still? Awesome. That was like a quarter of the room, and I'm going to take it. It's awesome. So here we've got some text. This is using a method of animation here where I reveal the text through a series of masks rather than a character animator. And all these, this shape, which is a line that was made with a shape tool, and my text is connected to what's known as a null object. And that's basically just a way of placing everything together to create a text animation coming in. I want to give access to the artist in Premiere Pro, the text template, and also access to this little mirror effect. This was created, by the way, with an effect in After Effects called Magnify, and a third-party plugin, which is an RGB distortion from Sapphire to create a little bit of distortion within this sort of mirror fly-in. So to send this over to Premiere Pro, this template, I want to do a few things. I want to come to the window menu, and what is that panel inside of Premiere Pro? Essential Graphics. Inside of Essential Graphics, I've already taken the time to take a bunch of parameters that are in this composition and place them into this panel. So how do you do that? Basically, you can find out which properties to bring over by pressing the Solo Supported Properties button. And you will be revealed with a lots of parameters. Pretty much everything you see here that's been listed, you can bring over to Premiere Pro. All you need to do now is take one of these properties, drag it into the panel. Now, a few things to keep in mind of additions that have been added to this panel on the new release. One is that long sheet of parameters that you saw in my Premiere Pro project no longer has to be as long as you can group them and then reveal the group that they're in to make the adjustment, which is just a great way of organizing these text templates. You can see what I've chosen to pick for the next Premiere Pro user, scaling my text, positioning it, and being able to change the font, being able to change the text itself. We can also allow the authors to change the font of the text as well. So you've got all of this stuff available for you to switch and bring in the Essential Graphics panel. The second thing that I wanted to mention is responsive design. Do you guys remember how in Premiere Pro I set a region around the in point and out point of the animation to make sure it wasn't going to be scalable? You can do the same thing in After Effects. There is one addition. By the way, this is done with a work area, which are these little handles. You basically take them, identify an area of your composition, and choose to create a protected region from work area. The cool thing about it in After Effects is it's not just at the beginning and end of, in Premiere Pro's instance, it's an actual Premiere Pro graphic. In After Effects, it's, in fact, a composition. So you can have several protected areas if you have multiple animations within it. And this protected area is going to be identified by markers when you create it. Now, for bringing it over into Premiere Pro, we are here in the Essential Graphics panel. Does everyone see the handy little button? Awesome. You click on it, save your project. After you've saved your project, we will see that After Effects is going to give us a similar dialog box to what we saw in Premiere Pro, which deals with compatibility. So give me a warning if fonts are not available, and warn me if After Effects needs to be installed to customize this motion graphic template. We'll choose where to save it. I'll choose to save it here on my local templates folder. And if I press OK, After Effects will handle the rest. I've already done this and prepared this to show you what it looks like in Premiere Pro, so we don't have to wait through the entire export process. I'm back in Premiere Pro. Somehow, magically, if that spinning wheel of death stops, I will be able to show you what's happening. Do it. Come on. Let me see if I can close the After Effects project. You really want to go home, huh? Okay, so don't do it. Okay, here we go. There's the template. Yay! I might have spoken too early. You guys see the color, you see the template. This was dragged into the timeline, and I want to show you that those same controls you saw in Essential Graphics are available in the Edit tab here inside of Premiere Pro. The addition being that they're grouped together, and again, we can make additional changes to these templates. I actually even changed it so that we wouldn't have video, and this could go over another element. Changes to the mirror's zoom level. Maybe show that when it zooms over my text. A little bit slow performance here, but you guys can see that difference in scale. It's going to look a lot better with the video. So now it's scaled up based on the controls that I gave someone. It's like having a little mini version of After Effects inside of Premiere Pro. Did you guys all learn something? Okay. Those are some workflows in between Premiere Pro and After Effects, looking at it from a beginner level as well as incorporating some intermediate skills. We've got a little bit of time. Does anyone have a question? I hope I see your hand. Yes.
So when you turn down the video on the template so that you can't see that video, if you were to put another video underneath, would it still take your mirror elements with the other video?
Yes, so the question was that magnify effect, that mirror, would it take other elements underneath if it's a different video, if I'm hearing the question right? And the answer is yes. That magnify effect will take those other things underneath. I did apply it to like a solid layer in order to achieve it, but you could search some tutorials online and see this. Anyone else, questions? I'm going to be here after for a little bit as well. Yes?
I know for Premiere Rush allows you to use motion graphics templates from Premiere Pro, but those templates include ones that have masks in them, like text behind the stones.
So the question was that you know that they have templates in Adobe Rush, if I'm correct? And would they have a template where I reveal the stones through masking? The answer for the time being is no. Okay? That's something that you can have in Premiere Pro, but you should know that you can take an Adobe Rush project and you can open it in Premiere Pro and then do that task if necessary. So you can stay for Rush if you're more comfortable with the workflow, and then when you're ready to do that next task, you can go to Premiere Pro for those masking capabilities. So for some of those of you who might have some questions at the back of the room, you can feel free to come up. I'll be here for a little bit longer. I want to encourage everyone to fill out a session survey. I want to make sure that your time was well spent, hopefully, in this session. And I hope I was able to explain what you were looking for. If not, feel free to reach out. You're more than welcome. I will try to put you in touch with those resources. And here's my contact information. Guys, you're done max. Congratulations. Thank you for hanging out and staying around. I hope it was helpful.